Let's watch a theist in full retreat mode. This is incredibly common among the religious, but I just shake my head every time I see it because they're just admitting defeat. They can't convince the skeptical that their beliefs are true. They can hardly convince anybody these days, so they just make up excuses and run away. And that's what we're going to see today. Won't that be fun? This one comes from a channel called Darwin to Jesus, and I'm sorry, but Darwin went the other way. It's called 6 Apologetic Hacks for How to Interact with Atheists Online. Yeah, and I'm sure none of those will be at all impressive because they never ever are, but it does give a window into the mind, and I use that term loosely, of the religious believer. These people don't know what they're doing, and it shows. So let's see what these 6 hacks are and how terrible they wind up being. And I'm predicting they're going to be pretty high on the cringe scale. How about you?
This is Darwin to Jesus. Welcome back to the channel.
Jesus looks kind of pissed, doesn't he? Granted, that can't be a real picture of Jesus, since Jesus wasn't a white guy with blue eyes, if there ever was a Jesus at all. Jesus would have been pretty dark, and that bothers a lot of people for some reason. It's why most of the images that you see for Jesus are a white guy, because they came out of Europe in the Middle Ages. Not that it really matters or anything, but I figured I had to break in here, because looking at a still screen isn't very entertaining. Hopefully, he's going to get to something, with a point. Let's see.
So the other day, a Christian asked me for advice on how to do apologetics when talking to atheists.
How about, don't. How about you just leave us alone? We're not banging on your door to share the good news of atheism with you. How about you, show the same respect? But that never happens, does it? Because I'll be honest here, if I'd never heard from a theist again, if they all just went away and kept their beliefs to themselves, I'd close up shop. I'd stop making videos about religion. I'd find something else to do. I don't think we have anything to worry about there, since these people don't seem to know how to shut up and leave other people alone. They certainly don't know how to stop sharing their faith. So I think we're pretty safe. And then they complain about us. Maybe look in the mirror first. Anyway, get on with it. How did this imaginary conversation actually go? Because I really don't believe you.
As a former atheist who has spent hundreds of hours discussing God and Christianity with atheists, I thought I could make a video to share what I've learned.
Why do I not believe that? Now, I don't know if this is actually a picture of that guy, but if it is, and from his voice, this guy sounds like he's in his late teens, doesn't he? Now, I could be wrong. He could just be really young sounding. I acknowledge that. But him saying he's spent years talking to atheists, that just makes me roll my eyes. Apparently, it's done the same to a lot of people, since the downvotes on this video way outnumber the upvotes by a significant margin. Not that that really means anything, but I just thought it was interesting, so I pointed it out. But anyway, let's just get back to it, because I care more about his actual content than about how he sounds anyhow.
So here are 6 rules for doing apologetics with atheists. Rule number 1, know what kind of atheist you're dealing with.
That could potentially be either a good thing or a bad thing. Are you trying to put atheists into boxes? Now, I can look at what other apologists have done, since this is by no means a new idea, and most of it has been avoid the people who know more than you do, only go after the gullible fools. Because that's really all they can do, right? It's not like they're going to convince anybody with a brain in their head. So I'm hoping he's not going to go that way, because that would be a nice change of pace, wouldn't it? But I guess we'll just have to see. I really want to be surprised one of these days, but I rarely ever am.
Not every atheist is the same. Some are conservative, some are pleasant and friendly.
Yeah. Looks like I was right. Because just looking at his description, he wants the dumb ones. He wants the ones who won't challenge his indefensible preconceptions, who are willing to listen to his preaching without comment, and who are really just looking to believe. They're looking for suckers. So you're right, you're not going to find an awful lot of atheists who are suckers, unless you mean default atheists who have no background in studying religion at all. And that's going to be hard to find these days because most of them, unless they're really, really, really young or really, really, really dumb, they've all looked into this and know it's wrong. But see, here's the problem. I am seeking actual truth. I am asking genuine questions, and sadly, the religious, they never seem to have any worthwhile answers. In fact, the more that I talk to theists, and I'm sure this guy would be no different, the more I'm convinced that they wouldn't know the truth if it bit them. They're not after the truth. They are after emotional comfort. They want to believe things that give them a warm fuzzy inside. That is not truth. That is fantasy. So A tier is mostly just a myth because the people that actually want the things that he's after, I don't think they really exist. And I don't think that's what he really wants. So let's continue.
And some are absolutely terrible.
Apparently, there's nothing between the two. I don't know, maybe he'll give me some more options, but he goes straight from A to F and assumes that most atheists are in the latter category. Sorry, but I'm still back in the A tier. He wouldn't think so, but he doesn't seem to know much about anything. This is just hiding from reality. I'm not saying that if people are sending you porno pedo pictures of Jesus off the bat, that you're not justified in blocking them. I certainly would, but I find it hard to believe that there are many of those out there. I'd probably block them too if I saw them, but I don't think I've ever seen them. Trolls are trolls though, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because people are just assholes. But this really comes off like he's hiding, and that's not much of a surprise either, is it?
To categorize the spectrum of atheists, I've made an atheist tier list that explains the different types you're likely to encounter.
Okay, he actually has done more work than that. That's a little bit of a surprise. First off though, why would you say S tier doesn't exist? Wouldn't you just move the unicorn atheist up into S tier and everything else goes up by one? That's kind of how these stupid tier lists work after all. Not that I'm a fan of any of it, I think it's all kind of dumb, but just saying. And I think it's hysterical he's got a fedora atheist when he's sitting there in the picture wearing a fedora. Now that assumes that's supposed to be him, which isn't really fair. I'm not really a lion after all. I know that probably comes as a shock to some people, but I'm just not. Too bad. Sorry to burst your bubble. It just seems that he's not thinking very hard about any of this, and maybe he's going to get into some of that down the road. I don't know. That would be nice. Let's see.
I'll link that in the description. Knowing the kind of atheist you're dealing with is crucial so you don't waste your time.
So, should we make a list of theists so we don't waste our time? I mean, I think all of it is a waste of time because not one theist ever, and we're closing in on 1,300 videos on the channel, but not a single one of them has ever had anything worthwhile to say. Now, that might be selection bias, I admit that, but the most vocal theists tend to be the worst and least credible, which is kind of an interesting conclusion, don't you think? So does that make all theists F tier? I don't know. Tell me down in the comments what you think, because I think that would actually make an interesting discussion.
Rule number 2, only engage with certain kinds of atheists.
So, in other words, run away. Now, I will engage with any theist, although granted, probably not for long for the worst of them. I'm not going to waste a lot of time on, say, a Steven Anderson type. And you notice he's only had a couple of videos in the entire history of the channel because I really don't think he has anything worth responding to, and he clearly hasn't put any actual thought into his beliefs, so I just don't bother. I'm not doing Westboro either, even back when they weren't completely irrelevant. I want theists who actually think they can defend their views. They can't, at least not so far, but I'm much more favorable to anybody who actually tries, even if ultimately they fail. And it would sure be nice if there were more of them that could do it, wouldn't there? Too bad there aren't.
Once you understand the different types of atheists, you can recognize which type you're dealing with and use that discernment to choose who you do apologetics with.
Meaning, who do you think you can bamboozle with your religious bullshit? This is very, very common. Back when we used to do a fair bit of stands against reason, they had a ton of videos where they talked about who you should talk to and why. They don't want you talking to people who are going to challenge your faith. It's why people like the Jehovah's Witnesses are so fast to blacklist your address if you know too much about their religion. Hell, tell them that you used to be a Jehovah's Witness when you were younger, but you were disfellowshipped. You'll never see them again because they're not allowed to talk to former members, although that is changing a little bit because they're running out of people to go after. Mostly, I just show that I know more about it than they do, and then I invite them to come back. And they go back to their church, make their after-action report, and my house gets marked off on their list with thick black ink because they never want to see me again because they're afraid that I'm going to deconvert their door knockers. And that's probably a good thing for them. The fact is, I haven't seen one of them in probably 6 or 7 years, and I'm not complaining about that, trust me.
You should only engage A, B, and maybe some high C-tier atheists.
Okay, I tried to go to his list, but it's over on Twitter, and I don't bother with that. So if anybody wants to click on his link and tell us what it says down in the comments, please feel free, go ahead, I'm not going to. Actually, I did try and I got an error. Something went wrong, try reloading. And no matter how many times I clicked on reload, it didn't work. So maybe that's a good thing too. Let me know if that's your experience when you post down in the comments, because it might save my sanity. And sorry, but after talking to and looking at the religious for so many years, I probably don't have a whole lot left.
Engaging with anyone below that will likely lead to frustration.
Then you know how we feel. It's like talking to a brick wall. And that's not necessarily meant to be mean, it's just the reality. Where is your evidence for that? We have faith. Well, I'm not impressed with your faith. I want to see your evidence. I want to know how you know that you're right. But I am right. You're going to hell. Yeah, it's just a pointless waste of time. It's them repeating their beliefs to you verbatim, and you saying, how do you know that? And them repeating their beliefs to you again verbatim. I think I'll agree that there aren't any S-tier theists, because that's who I'd really like to talk to. The people who can defend their beliefs with more than faith and fifis. And I am really convinced that those people don't exist, or at the very least that they won't exist for long, because the second that you care about the actual truth, that you actually want to defend your beliefs with evidence, it's far too easy to walk away from the faith because religion is just laughably ridiculous and unsupportable with anything objective. You can't get from, I sincerely care about the actual truth, to, my religion is factually correct. It just doesn't work that way, does it?
To identify the atheist not worth talking to, look for red flags like loaded questions, demands for proof, insults, reliance on rhetoric and sophistry, or attempts to control the conversation.
So, again, anybody who has a brain in their head. Because if you notice, most of that is what his side is doing on the regular, right? It wasn't atheists that came up with the Gish Gallop, was it? It wasn't us that said that nothing could ever change our minds. We're not the ones relying on presuppositionalism. Those are all religious inventions. It was just the religious proving how dishonest they are, and that's not really a surprise, is it? What we're really seeing here is fear. Fear of reality. Fear of being confronted with the truth. That's all the religious are really doing. They'd rather live in an insular little echo chamber where they can just reinforce each other's blind faith than to go out into the real world and have to back up their claims with something other than their say-so. This guy is terrified, and I hope nobody is surprised.
Instead, engage with atheists who are chill, ask fair questions, and avoid straw-manning you. Rule number 3. Don't expect them to change their mind.
Given the crap that the religious pull, that's a good idea, because we are not going to change our minds without evidence. What is the one thing that the religious never have? Evidence. He even said that as one of his criteria. He doesn't want to talk to anyone who expects him to prove what he's saying is true. Now, I don't expect the religious to change their minds either. It's hard to get out of the cult when you've been brainwashed since nearly birth. And I've said that before, but it's absolutely impossible for somebody to change your mind without your consent. If you're not ready and willing to change your mind, if you're not ready and willing to look at the actual evidence and go where it leads, then your mind will not be changed. And the religious are so emotionally attached to their beliefs that it takes a very, very, very long time to actually walk away. It is happening a lot, especially now, but once you hit about 35, it's incredibly rare. You are so set in your ways that almost nothing is ever going to change. So, I'm not in this to deconvert anyone. That's their problem, not mine. I'm just after the truth, and they don't seem to have any.
Atheists are often the most stubborn people you can witness to.
But that's the problem. Stop trying to witness. Stop trying to convert people. Just talk. Have an actual adult conversation. That's where the religious go wrong so often. They don't want to have a back and forth, honest discussion. They want to bring people to Jesus. Well, no wonder you fail so often. It's not that we're stubborn, it's that your beliefs are shit. You have no evidence to back them up, and for us, that is what it's going to take. We care if the things that you're spouting are actually true. And if you can't prove that, then you are just wasting your time. And that's not an us problem, that's a you problem. You are going into this completely the wrong way. Stop it, you're just making a fool of yourself.
They reject God because they think they are God.
Obviously not, because we don't believe in gods. This is another laughable lie that the religious tell themselves. We're not self-important. You are! You're the ones trying to tell yourself that you're the bestest buddy of the all-powerful creator of the universe. And that's stupid. This is all just ego on your side, whereas for us, we're just looking for the truth. I care as much about the actual speed of light as I do about the actual existence of any gods. I want to know how to get there in the same demonstrable way, and at least for the speed of light, we can test it, whereas for any gods, you just can't. You just have to believe it, and I'm not going to do that. If that's what you're expecting, then stop wasting everybody's time and just go away, because you're just making yourself look dumb.
So the idea that you might be right and they are wrong is not even a possibility to 99.99999% of them.
You're just looking in the mirror again. We are looking for verifiable evidence that what you're saying is demonstrably and objectively true in the real world, and you're not even trying to do that. That's the problem. The failure is you. You're not being rational. You just really like the idea. But liking the idea doesn't make the idea true, and it's the truth that matters. It's the evidence that matters. So you're just trying to tell yourself comforting stories because you just really want them to be true. So what? Your comfort means nothing to anyone but you. This is really where the issues come in, because we're not looking to feel good. We're looking for the demonstrable facts. The religious only want to be happy. That's the whole thing. That's all they're after. It's a complete miscommunication between the two sides. We spend most of our time talking past each other. Our goals are not the same, and until they are, there's no point to even trying. Again, we're not banging on their doors, are we? They're banging on ours. They need to be bringing their A game to the table. Maybe they need to figure it out.
Don't expect them to change their minds. If their minds ever do change, it will likely be far in the future and you won't know about it. It took me years to change my mind and become a Christian.
And a lot of Christians take years to deconvert. It did for me, at least completely. Once I started down that road, I became a weaker and weaker and weaker Christian, but it took years to give up the idea entirely, and I think that's true of most people. The real question, though, is, do you have a good reason to believe? And more importantly, I think, can you express that good reason to others in a way that will have them agree? Just because you're really impressed thinking that Bigfoot is running around in the woods or that pixies cause cancer or whatever, that doesn't mean that anyone else is going to look at you and think that you've got a brain in your head. Again, that's why these people tend to keep to themselves, where they can all give validation to the idea that they share in common. But that's just an echo chamber, and echo chambers are not impressive. I don't run an echo chamber here. Anybody can watch, and I welcome all comers. Anyone can comment, so long as they have something of substance to say, and they're not a troll. Those are the only people I ever delete comments from, are the complete assholes who are only here to troll. And they have to be really obvious about it. Otherwise, I just let anything through. I don't care. When it comes to religion, that's not the case. We see censorship galore because they're not after the truth. They're after confirmation bias. They can't show that they've got a clue. They're just running on fifis and faith. And that is just not impressive at all.
Rule number 4, do not give evidence.
Well, that's easy because you don't have any. This is where the religious really run into trouble because they don't know what evidence is. It sounds good to me isn't evidence. It's rationalization. It's taking the things that you already believe on faith and assuming because it sounds good to you, that must make it true. But that's not how it works. Truth is testable, and religion is not. The religious have their list of stuff that is held in common among a certain circle of believers, but that is not evidence. That's confirmation bias. If you take it outside of your pool of believers, it's no longer universally believed. That's why you have to be able to back it up with evidence. And that's why I think it's funny to watch theists talk to each other because they don't share the same beliefs in common. We've looked at channels like Cave to the Cross, I think that's what they're called, where they're just confidently spouting the stuff that they believe is true without being able to show that any of it is true. And the second that anyone disagrees, then the other guy's automatically wrong because obviously what they believe is true. It's not evidence. That's confirmation bias. That's bullshit. Evidence must be something demonstrable that anyone can look at and evaluate without having to hold to a particular position on it first. And the religious don't have that. They just have fifis and faith. And fifis and faith don't mean anything at all.
This rule will surprise many Christians, but I mean it. Atheists don't care about evidence. They only ask for it to throw it back in your face and claim it's not evidence.
Because it's not. This is why these discussions rarely go anywhere, because we're speaking two entirely different languages. It's really sad how many times I have to explain this, and it never means anything to the theist, because they're after comfort and I'm after fact. Show me the facts, and they have nothing at all to present. They only have their interpretations of things filtered through their religious beliefs and their emotions, and that doesn't mean anything. It's like being in a murder trial and someone getting up on the stand and demanding that the butler had to have done it. Why? Because they have beliefs that all butlers are guilty of murder, so it's just got to be true. They aren't evaluating the evidence rationally. They're not even looking at any actual evidence. They're just making this shit up in their head. They are just insisting that what they already believe is so there. It's why I keep saying that we have to be able to take ourselves out of it. It doesn't matter how we feel. It doesn't matter what we want. It matters only what is demonstrably true. And the religious want nothing at all to do with that, do they? And that's sad, really, isn't it?
Only give evidence to an atheist if they're your friend, you've established mutual respect, and you're in a private conversation.
Meaning you don't care at all about the truth. If you did, then none of those things would matter. This is just more fifis and faith, and that doesn't deserve any respect at all. This is, again, why they only want to speak with each other, because anyone outside of their faith party will just laugh in their faces, and we should. This is just a dodge to get around their logical requirements to provide rational corroboration for their claims. But you're not going to believe it anyhow. Then your evidence is crap to begin with. That's a you problem. It's not an us problem. You don't understand what evidence is, and you don't have any to present regardless. Now, you're just trying to rationalize your way around your own failures, granted. That's all they can really do, but that is all that they're doing. Don't come crying to us because you're useless. Stop being a dumbass.
Ultimately, evidence isn't going to change anyone's mind because atheism is about rebellion, not evidence.
Whatever would we do if we didn't have mental midgets like this to tell us what atheism is all about? This all looks a whole lot like self-defense, doesn't it? He really wants his religious beliefs to be true, therefore he just makes stuff up to coddle his feelings because he doesn't want to look foolish. Except he does because he is. If he had anything, he'd present it. Everything he does have is just baldly rationalizing his way back to his own blind faith. It's true because he really wants it to be true, and therefore everything supports his beliefs, because otherwise he'd be really, really sad, and he can't have that, can he? This is why these people look so bad. Because they are.
Rule number 5. Don't take anything personally.
Except that's all you're doing. You are trying desperately to defend your feelings, and because your beliefs are a huge part of your own personal makeup and self-concept, you are insisting that your beliefs have to be true, because otherwise you don't know what the hell to go do with yourself. You are taking this personally, and that's all you can do. Whereas someone like me, I only want to know the truth. I am not remotely important in any of this. How I feel is completely irrelevant. How you feel is all you care about. And I don't care about your feelings at all. I don't care about my feelings at all. I care about reality. Maybe you should give that a shot, because there's a serious difference in our epistemic standards, and you are on the wrong side of reality.
Atheists will insult you, demean you, gaslight you, denigrate our Lord, and more.
Says the guy whose own side tells everyone that they're going to hell. First off, fuck your Lord. It's a character in a book of mythology. That's just you taking this whole thing personally, which you said not to do. Who cares about insults if you're taking yourself out of the discussion? Even more so if we're not even talking about you. This is how you know they're not serious about any of it. It's all fifis and faith. It's all they're doing and then playing make-believe to try to distract from it. If you were only after the truth like I am, telling Jesus to go fuck himself wouldn't matter. But it's because it's all about you, that's what you care about. And that's just dumb.
Don't let it get to you. Don't take it personally. Atheists love to get the better of Christians, so if you find yourself getting upset, take a break from the conversation. If this happens often, you should probably stop engaging with atheists.
Sure, because you're not good at it. Now, I'm not going to bring up the Great Commission where all Christians are commanded to go out and make everyone on the planet a Christian. I know you're not good at that. Nobody is. It's why you've got people like Greg Kuchel making excuses for why all of his students are failing miserably to lead anybody with a brain to Christ. Going after the low-hanging fruit isn't impressive. That's why they have to spend so much time making excuses for why it fails with just about everyone. Christianity is dying, and it's people like this Darwin to Jesus guy that are just making themselves look silly because they can't handle the reality. Yes, by all means, stop bothering atheists. Stop bothering everyone. Some serious introspection is required here because you're really not good at any of this. You're just making yourself look dumb. Knock it off.
They'll make a fool out of you and hurt your witness.
No, you're the one making a fool of yourself. That's the part you don't understand. You are making yourself look stupid engaging in this at all. You have nothing of value to present. You're just spouting fee-fees, and you hope that the other person is just going to respond. The reason that hardly anyone responds is because your message is shit. Your beliefs are shit. For a lot of these people, they're shit. That's the problem. So this guy is trying desperately to retreat from anybody that makes him feel bad because this is all about his feelings. That's all it's about. So much for not making it about yourself because that's all you're doing.
If you're going to deal with atheists, you need very thick skin. Rule number 6, know why you want to have the conversation. In these discussions, there are 3 healthy goals you can have: to convince the atheist, to convince the listener, or learn from the interaction.
That's actually fine. Know why you're doing what you're doing. That ought to go for everyone. However, I don't think that any of these are really a good reason. I'm not looking to convince anyone. I'm not preaching. I'm not out there trying to give people the good word. I'm looking for the truth. The whole truth and absolutely fucking nothing but the truth. The reason is to see if the person I'm talking to has any. What do you believe? Why do you believe it? And why do you think that I should believe it too? Try to convince me that you have the slightest clue. And that's going to take evidence that I can study for myself. I don't care what you think. I care what you can demonstrate is actually the case in the real world that we both share. So while those things can be valuable to some degree at least, none of them are really a good reason to do this at all. You have to actually care about reality, and these people just don't.
I recommend making your primary goal to learn from the interaction. Often, the best way to learn how to debate is through trial and error, so you can learn a lot just by applying yourself and having these conversations.
Only if your purpose is to push your belief on others, which is stupid. I'm not looking to convert anybody. I don't really care what you believe, except insofar as the harm that you might cause to others and to society if your beliefs are irrational. Outside of that, I don't really care. If you want to believe in rainbow unicorns that fart chocolate gumdrops, knock yourself out. I couldn't care less. Just don't pollute the minds of children with your stupidity. Don't try to get it forced into law. Don't try to harm anyone else with your laughable beliefs. We can have a productive conversation where I will evaluate your claims and your evidence, and I get to decide if I think your ideas are valid or true. They are either worth believing in or they are not. And it's my decision to figure that out for myself because reality actually matters. If they're not, then you probably shouldn't believe it either, but I'm not going to try to force that on you because I couldn't if I tried. Because mostly I just don't care.
But whatever your goal is, know it going in and keep it in mind. Alright, so those are the 6 rules for engaging with an atheist as a Christian apologist. I hope you found these rules instructive.
No, I found them pretty absurd. This comes off as fear talking, fear of confronting the inherent weakness of your beliefs. If you were at all rational, which you don't seem to be, you'd welcome those interactions because they would allow you to weed out the poor ideas in your own head. But the vast majority of theists that I ever run into, they aren't open to testing their own faith. They just want to make everybody around them just like they are. No thanks. You're just making yourself look ridiculous. After that, he goes on for a couple of seconds pushing his channel, but we're just going to skip over all that. This has proven just how irrational a person he actually is, and that's hardly a surprise. Most of them do it. I don't think we've run into a single theist that has ever shown that they had a brain in their head, at least when it comes to their religious beliefs. These aren't hacks so much as they are excuses for retreat. Don't talk to anybody that you can't con with your silly beliefs. If that's all you're after, then you are doing intelligence wrong. Full stop. But what do you expect from the religious? Let me know down in the comments what you thought of all of this, because I was thoroughly not impressed. Was this guy just running away and making excuses about it? I'm really curious about your take. We don't really get honest, open conversations with the religious because we're after entirely different things. They want to make the world delusional just like they are. We just want to understand reality to the best of our ability to do so. Of the two, I pick the latter as the only valid option. What say you? Let me know.